And now companies are looking at CS function as the most important function in their company, right? Like people are taking their CS organizations with mature leaders, bringing in tools and processes which are way ahead of times. And more importantly, right now I think it's the best time to rethink the whole recurring revenue and CS function, and hence the whole reinventing recurring revenue, right? Community is the single most important go to market tool or advantage or lever that CEOs have. Community resonates your message. It can amplify your positives. It can also amplify your negatives. It can lift you to $1 billion and it can kill you overnight. So there has to be a deliberate community management strategy, customer community management strategy that you should think about. It should be OKR or Charter or V2Mom or whatever tool you use, a co-owned goal between your CCO and your CMO. Is your product most rated on Gartner? Is your product most rated on G2? Is there a community where you don't have a presence but your customers are saying nice things about you? Is your customer coming to your defense when a competition is trying to take a dig at you? Where I'm going with my thesis, Jaideep, is recurring revenue as a function. I'm not talking about customer success, I'm talking about renewal management, account management, customer success, deal making, everything put together can be disrupted using agents. And agentic AI is the latest wave of intelligence that is hitting the market, where you have agents that can take action with human in the loop. So previously it was AI executing on tasks, then it was AI giving decision options. Now AIs are cognizant enough to take action on your behalf. So where I'm going with that is, if you have some low hanging fruit of tasks that your CSMs are doing now, you can offload them.
And you wrote a book, and it's called The Customer Success Flywheel, which emphasizes on the importance of building advocacy and driving recurring revenue growth. What are the key stages of this flywheel? Can you talk about it briefly about the flywheel? How can probably organizations accelerate that movement? Here is a staunch reality. Most SaaS companies are leaving millions on the table by treating marketing and customer success as separate silos. While marketing obsesses over brands and acquisition and funnel, and customer success focuses on retention, the customer experiences fractures at the handoff. Welcome to the Marketing Couch. I'm Jerry. In my 20 plus years of working with B2B companies and now as a consulting CMO for tech startups, I have witnessed this disconnect repeatedly. Marketing promises transformation, but post sales, the situation is different. It can deliver a different reality. The result? Confused customers, missed expansion opportunities, and churns that could have been prevented. To discuss this important topic, I invited Atmaram Gunupudi. Atma is currently the global head of professional services at ThoughtSpot, a leading AI company. He is also the author of the Customer Success Flywheel. And Atma is also a research fellow at the Indian School of Business studying AI's impact on recurring revenue. With 2 decades of leading post-sales teams at Salesforce and later at MoEngage, Atma has cracked the code on turning customer success into a revenue engine. We dove deep into why marketing and customer success partnerships aren't just nice to have, they are survival critical today. How to create seamless customer experiences from first touch to expansion. And Atma shared his game changing insights on using agentic AI to transform recurring revenue management. Atma also revealed his controversial take on where customer success should report and why most SaaS companies are structuring their teams completely wrong. If you enjoy this conversation and want more insights like this, please like, share, and subscribe to the Marketing Couch. Your support will help us continue to bring in these conversations with the sharpest minds in B2B today. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this fascinating conversation with Atma Gunupudi. Hey Atma, welcome to the Marketing Couch.
Hey Jaideep, thank you very much for having me. It's an extreme honor and a privilege to have this conversation. To be on.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to have you on this show. In fact, I have been looking forward to this conversation because This is a subject where I spent good amount of time, and who could be a better person on the show to talk about it, and we'll dive in a moment. But let's get started. I interestingly observed that your LinkedIn title says that SaaS CCO, AI researcher, and reinventing the recurring revenue. Can you talk about it in the context of your current work and how these things fit in?
Yeah, no, amazing. And thanks for noticing. I always thought nobody ever sees that on your LinkedIn. And I always hoped somebody sees it and asks me what that means, right? So, if I were to define myself in my professional life, I would like to say those three dimensions. SaaS CCO, you and I have gone way back to the MoEngage days where I used to manage all the post sales teams and we would take care of recurring revenue, right, of the customers. And titles aside, I always felt responsible for the customer base of MoEngage, right? And that's what I identify myself with, right? Titles, job definitions aside, I feel myself responsible for the end customer of the organization. So that's what a CCO is, right? A chief customer officer. And SaaS is where I belong. I've not worked anywhere else since the last 21 years. At the risk of dating myself, I have only been working in SaaS. So there go the SaaS CCO and AI researcher. Jaideep, I'm sure you're hearing a lot of buzz around AI, agentic AI, generative AI, and I honestly feel like a kid in a candy store. And anybody who's in the job market or in a professional setup in this phase is extremely lucky. Such revolutions rarely happen in our lifetimes. Forget about being witnessing one. As they say, I was too young when the cloud revolution started. Probably would be too old for space revolution. So generative AI revolution in general found me. And some people get bikes during their midlife crisis. I decided to pursue my PhD. So I'm pursuing my PhD in ISB in the impact of agentic AI in recurring revenue management. So that's why the AI researcher. And reinventing recurring revenue. I mean, you and I have been in the trenches together, Jaideep, and you know how the role of a CSM has changed from somebody who's just keeping a record book of what the customer is doing to be actively bringing in revenue. And now companies are looking at CS function as the most important function in their company, right? Like people are decking their CS organizations with matured leaders, bringing in tools and processes which are way ahead of times. And more importantly, right now, I think it's the best time to rethink the whole recurring revenue and CS function, and hence the whole reinventing recurring revenue, right? Where do you deploy resources? What do you do? And at what point do you implement proactive measures versus reactive measures? It is saddening to see some of the large enterprises are still referring to age old playbooks and are still surprised as to why they are not getting the greater than 90 GRRs, right? But it's time to kind of tear out the old playbooks and throw them in the dustbin and rethink some of these playbooks. So that's why the reinventing recurring revenue piece.
Fantastic. So when you said that kid in the candy store, and then, looking at your energy, which is infectious always, I have to compliment you, especially, you are in many ways inspirational that you've taken a PhD. Obviously, this is a challenging path by all means, and then in an area, when we'll dive into it probably a little later, in an area which is again cutting edge, the most contextual and relevant in today's any business discussion. And recurring revenue, like you mentioned, I think is a boardroom discussion, right? It's a discussion among VCs and founders. It's a discussion between boardroom and founders. It's a discussion between CCO and CEO, and perhaps everyone in the CXO charter, right?
It's everybody's business.
It is
Absolutely.
everybody's business. Yes. So, Atma, you led customer success at Salesforce,
Yes,
and
sir.
then you also led customer success at MoEngage. Now, Salesforce, like you mentioned, you are probably been all your life in SaaS, and Salesforce is probably the most synonymous name that we know that we can connect to with SaaS. And then MoEngage, which is a hyper growth startup. At MoEngage, since we work together, I know you managed a large portfolio that includes onboarding, professional services, customer success, customer support, and that is to globally. So obviously, it's a huge charter. Do you see or did you experience anything different between Salesforce, which is a large enterprise, and a hyper startup like MoEngage? Any learning from there, or any specific problem that you found is different in different kind of companies and size and growth stage, right?
Yeah, no, I think thank you for. I mean, I'm glad you're asking some very fundamental and to the core questions. Jerry, we were discussing off the record. Also, I saw the questions and they were very thought provoking, and I couldn't expect anything less from a person like you. You are also a coach and a lot more than just a CMO. So this question is very relevant, and I made a very cautious decision to break away from Salesforce at a stage where I thought my identity was Salesforce, right? I spent 10 years at Salesforce. I probably saw Salesforce's hyper growth. And then at some point, I decided to break even and I joined MoEngage right about when they closed the Series B. It was a very young company led by very young, energetic leadership team. So there was a lot of difference. I'll be lying if I say it was not. In fact, the first few months were very difficult for me to adjust. And that's why I tell all the leaders, right, give yourself some time to adjust in your new roles. You'll start when you'll fall in love with the job, right? And the same thing happened with MoEngage. Let me start with the similarities between both companies, and I that's why I bet again on MoEngage, because at the root of it, both companies have the same core values. When you talk about trust, innovation, and both the companies in a way have customer as their first core value, right? Salesforce calls it customer success, and MoEngage calls it customer first, but their core values are very similar. So I think at a very young age of the company, MoEngage figured out the importance of customer success and customers in general. That gave me immense power to operate and autonomy, and also the budget to get the work done in terms of setting up a great scalable customer success process. That's the similarity, right? So the similarities are the core values and how the CEOs and the core team looks at customers. The differences obviously are when it's like a David and Goliath story, right? Like when you come from a large enterprise where processes are figured out, there is an answer or a playbook for every problem. Probably that was one of the reasons why I wanted to change also, right? And coming to a hyper growth company like MoEngage, where we were figuring out everything from the scratch. We were multi-product, multi-region strategies where we were introducing new products, spanning up new regions, building team from the scratches, hiring the first in-region resources. There were a lot of things happening, which in hindsight gave me immense experience, right? And I'm forever grateful to MoEngage and Ravi for giving me that opportunity and that learning. So yeah, so there were a lot of changes, and also I think it's always different to work for a growing brand versus an established brand. This is my very pet peeve of mine. When I first started with Salesforce, there was these executive conversations around, hey, nobody gets fired for hiring Microsoft. Salesforce, everybody is skeptical because it was cloud, it was new. And I heard the same thing from a customer exec when we were kind of having a conversation with them, and they said, hey, nobody ever gets fired for hiring Salesforce, whereas MoEngage is relatively new. And I said, wow, things change fast, right? And you now know that MoEngage is a very reputed brand in some regions where probably nobody will get fired for hiring MoEngage, right? Whereas in some regions it is establishing itself. But I think it's about fighting the fight and staying your ground and doing the right thing. Eventually market will recognize. So yeah, so it's one of the most important decisions of my life, and I'm in hindsight very proud of taking that decision, Jerry.
Totally, yeah. I think the work, especially on the customer success at MoEngage, is exemplary. I mean, I keep quoting that to many young companies, many SaaS founders, when they are thinking of building a customer success organization. That brings me to an important point. How do you define the charter of customer success in a modern SaaS organization today?
Yeah, no, amazing, right? And I'm glad you asked this question, right? And to your point, very young CEOs from straight out of college often ask me this question, right? What does customer success mean? I have to build a customer success charter. I said, like, I would rather not get caught up in the customer success charter, but I would just say, what is your customer charter, right? And customers, companies go through various waves of customer success innovation, Jerry. Every company starts by being reactive, right? In the beginning of the company, they all are trying to make the product fit the market. Everybody is a support person, everybody is reactive. Even the CEOs are trying to fix bugs to deliver the vision that they want to deliver. Things mature and everybody becomes a bit more proactive, kind of, the customer journey. You have kind of zeroed in on customer life cycle. You know what are the interventions required to get the customer to where they need to get to, so that you as a company can continue to keep the customer happy and get the recurring revenue. Then companies mature and become very consultative, right? So You just don't stick to your product or your platform, but you also tell them the best practices in the domain that which you operate, right? Like for MoEngage, as a company, they started customer engagement leadership courses, right? Self.
Correct.
And then they started also teaching building the growth community. Salesforce, I mean, Salesforce is a shining star in this space, where they created an exemplary consultative practice where they have accelerated digital migration for several companies. They stopped becoming a CRM company, right? Now they are the digital transformation company in the world, right? And they have almost all business processes under their belt to varying degree of success, but they are doing a lot more. That's the consultative phase, right? And then comes the transformative companies, right? Companies like OpenAI that we are talking about. Microsoft has transformed itself several times, and it continues to transform its customers. This is where you change the game. You're not talking about your product. You're not even talking about the industry. You're talking about a whole different way of doing things. And hopefully, that's where the future is, and that's where the winners are differentiated from the people. And that's where I tell, like to your point, young CEOs and CCOs that don't get bought into this whole customer success versus account management versus account executives. Think about what your customer needs and think about how to keep them happy. Focus on recurring revenue, not the customer success nomenclature, right? So
Yeah, you are right. In fact, one of the key observations that I often come across is that customer success still seems an afterthought in many young organizations, and probably there is too much of focus, obviously, on building your pipeline, building the driving the top line and acquisition, customer acquisition, right?
yeah,
So customer success is still very tactical in that way.
exactly.
And an area that I'm sure you talk a lot, both in social media and your through your narrative, which is, and you also mentioned here, which is the moment you think through the customer lifecycle management or the entire journey, then you will be able to see actually that how important is that. And especially in the enterprise businesses, if you want to really do an enterprise business, and it is very important that you are working through the accounts after you get your foothold there, right? It's only then you start discovering, and your customer success organization is critical to understand not just the immediate requirement with related to the solution or the software, but also understanding what is the tech stack there, understanding what is the workflow customer success is. And you also mentioned understand the domain nuances, right?
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think all of these are subtle things that often gets lost in the weeds because you are thinking through at a very high level, right?
Exactly. Sorry, I just wanted to interject there, right? And that's the difference between what I call the GPT CS leader versus an experienced CS leader, right? That's
Yep.
that's the nature of the job. We have a new crop of GPT leaders who can very easily talk about best practices, right? And
Right.
then that's which is a great thing, right? And I'm glad people
Hmm.
are curious about the
Hmm.
function, and my function is growing, which is obviously great for me. But it is a very easy trap to drink too much Kool-Aid without actually understanding why you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The difference, I guess, is between a real CCO and a vibe CCO, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the vibe. Yeah, I get it. Exactly. That's the new word.
So, if we were to really call out one or two trends that really is changing this space, what are those would be in 2025?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, again, most of the people are talking about this, Jaideep, and I think I would like to step out of my function and the topic of the conversation for today. I think the most important trend, which still unfortunately 90% of CXOs are either not acknowledging or undercutting it, is the time between idea to market is drastically reduced. I still have conversations with executives today where they deliberately discuss a topic to the death, an idea to the death, and then by then both the idea and execution process becomes obsolete. So I think in the most important trend in 2025 is faster go to market. Not the sales angle. Let's call it the faster concept to market, right?
Sure.
And this has never happened, right? Jaideep, you and I have been around the block. We are young at heart, but we have been around the block for quite some time. And this is the fastest the concept has ever hit the market in our experiences, right? And this is only getting more and more easy for people with great ideas to execute, right? So that's the first important trend that I'm observing. The second trend that I'm observing is traditional barriers to entry. are no longer relevant. Whether it may be a market or whether it may be an idea or a vertical, traditional barriers of entry were capital, resources, network. Everything is becoming very obsolete and very irrelevant. And this is the era of single employee billion-dollar companies, and this is going to be a reality very soon. You can vibe code, and I will get to it in a bit. But csflywheel.ai, the website that I created it in 12 hours for less than $100. And if I'm able to do it, there are so many other people who can do it, right? So that's the second most important trend. And the third most important trend is knowledge curve, right? So which also has, what I mean by knowledge curve is it's gotten very steep very fast. Motivated employees in your organizations are learning very fast. Ambitious employees in your organizations are becoming capable very fast. And if you are not finding great things for them to do, very easy for you to lose talent, right? So these are three important things. Like I said, if I am actually, and I'm sure you are too, are scared of something, it's these are the three things, right? Like concepts are coming to market very fast, barriers are not there anymore. You need to keep your people happy by giving them quality work.
Yeah.
So these are the three important trends, and this is true for customer success as it is true for any other function
Correct,
um,
correct.
in,
And
in a company.
related to that, wearing the marketing hat, one of the challenges that I see that often when I again talk to the early stage founders, there's a lot of talk about building stuff, like, because building has probably been never been easier than
Yeah.
today. And like you mentioned, we are going to probably soon see a single person $1 billion company. It started showing up here and there already. A lot of signs are there. So product managers, design thinkers, idea oriented people will be able to build quickly new products and without too much dependency on engineering and so on. One of the questions that I don't hear too much, where I think, again, it depends on how long you have spent time in the business, is your GTM. Because the challenge is that selling is a different ball game, and you may have the fastest way to bring or develop a product. Taking it to market is an art, and that's where understanding the GTM, the distribution, is extremely critical. And I see that more and more people will focus on solving that puzzle. That, I guess, is vibe coding and vibe marketing and vibe CCO will not going to change, right? Because that's where human brain will come up.
Yeah.
A lot of partnership will be required, a lot of collaboration will be required, because no single person is a winner today, right?
100%. And
There's
I
a
love the fact that you called it out, Jaydeep, right? Like at the end of the day, first principle thinking will always win, right? Whatever we are doing is a conduit to accelerate the core principles, right? So to your point, yeah, I can get a concept faster than ever before, right? I can get a concept to market faster than ever before. But if you don't know what the customer wants, there is no point in you bringing a concept to the market. There was a very recent study I was studying about how agents are now being abandoned because people are realizing there is no traction to those agents, right? Everybody is a vibe coder nowadays, and everybody is building agents, right? It's a dangerous trend, and you will soon have 7 billion agents or more, right? But the point is, now if you don't know what the customer needs, the ability to understand what a customer needs at the core of it is what CCO is.
absolutely, absolutely,
And if you are not able to communicate to your customer what you have, nobody cares how fast you have gotten the concept to the market. You can
absolutely.
you can laud yourselves on being the best, most technically savvy product if it is not talking to the customer. And the ability to tell the customer what you have is marketing,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
right?
And I'm so glad that you brought that point, Atma, because this is such an important and relevant point. It's a cliche that we all say that, know your customer. But
Yeah,
the fact is that this is the crux of it, right? Knowing your customer, actually, the buck stops there.
exactly.
Knowing the customer is the most important, whether you are a customer success function, whether you're a marketing function or a sales function, any GTM function,
Yeah.
or even product, right? Knowing your customer, the
So,
more you know, right, the
yeah,
better you are able to serve the need, the fundamental, right, the gap. And the way it, I think, happens, I was just reading yesterday an article, is that you do more sales by asking question rather than giving solutions.
exactly. That's
It's
that's the
almost
only,
like a form of coaching in some
exactly.
way.
That's the only way you do it, right? Otherwise, you end up speaking about what you know
Yeah.
than what they need, and then it's a lose-lose situation. Yeah, no, 100%, totally aligned.
So if let's say in terms of mindsets and even in terms of when you are in customer success, right? You are in that zone, you are in that wearing that hat in that function. Unless you are a CXO, obviously, where you have a broader view of business. If you are a CSM today, right? You're living in a very uncertain time where you are hearing and reading about how agents are going to take over, how things are going to get automated, and so many uncertainties, right? So how do you think, what are the maybe couple of things that a customer success team should be thinking in next 3 to 5 years, considering that the technology is evolving so fast? Is there anything you think that the CS function should think?
No, 100%. And this is a very unfortunately very frequently asked question, if I can say
Yes,
so myself, right?
yes.
And this comes from a place of fear than a place of excitement. Right? I would rather be very excited about how things are changing today. Right? If
Mm,
I were a CSM in this market, I would be the most excited because what agents are going to do are trying to reduce the monotonous, boring, repetitive tasks from my day to let me focus on areas where I'm very excited about, where I can add
mm,
value.
mm,
Right? Now, digging deep into the question that you asked me, right? So, if I were a CSM today, what are the skills or areas that I would focus on to survive, so to speak, the agent attack, right? So, there are three dimensions to this, Jerry. One is the operational dimension. So, any number of agents you take in the market are tools that are available to CSMs. Previously, there were customer success platforms like Gainsight, Churn Zero, Salesforce, etc. Now, the same platforms are giving you tools which could do a lot more than what they did before, right? And which is a welcome change. In fact, as a CS leader, I have always had this complaint with some of the customer success platforms is that they were just record keeping websites. And my CSMs had to do more work in updating such tools than the tools were helping my CSMs, right? So,
yeah,
in a way, this is a good thing that I don't have to now update a Gainsight, a Churn Zero, or Salesforce now. Their agents know a lot more, so I don't have to waste time in record keeping, so to speak. I would, as a CSM, focus on operational efficiency, right? Irrespective of how people change, how companies change, how many agents are there, ability to get more out of limited resources is the operational excellence everybody is looking for. So if you are a leader working on long tail customers, like digital success leader or long tail leader or the scale leader as people call it is very important for you to understand how can I engage more tools, because probably long tail customers are not the area where your company wants to invest more resources on. It's a fact of the game, right? So if you are efficient, if you are operationally inclined, you can help the company by automating most of the tasks, and you would be the most precious resource a company can have if you can deliver a lot more revenue with fewer people. So operational efficiency is always important.
absolutely.
The second thing is account management or sales. When I say sales, again, people try to get very attached to the word sales, and they're like, "Oh, how can I sell to my customers? I'll stop being their trusted advisor." I would say no, that's not the way it works. If you are able to understand what the customer, you just mentioned this, right? The crux of the game is what the customer needs, and to
Correct.
provide them an introduction, so to speak, to what they are looking for. That's all we need. That's account management, right? To be able to farm the customer, identify opportunities where you can position your book of business and all the products that you sell. So that I think is still underdeveloped and underexplored aspect of customer success, as to how customer success can get more revenue from the existing customer base, because every company nowadays is a multi-product, multi-region company. And I'll see, as the market uncertainty increases, I see more M&As and more portfolios of products increasing, and companies becoming a lot more product portfolio companies where they'll have multiple products. So this is the time for account managers and customer success managers who can sell to shine. That's the second avenue. And the third most important avenue
Hmm.
is the functional expertise. I have been in my banking and financial services throughout my career. Like I know what assets to customer ratio is, and how financial institutions sell up to 12 to 13 products to a customer, and you start with low cost EMI right up to house loan, and how are those products structured, and how does that differentiate between insurance versus banking, and what are digital non-digital NBFCs, BFCs, right? So that the industrial expertise, and I know a lot of experienced manufacturing leaders, and they are shining today, right from assembly line improvements to product positioning to dealer management. There is a lot of functional knowledge required, and that's where the machines can never take a job from you if you are focused on where you need to be focused on, right? So that those are the three areas, JDP, where I would like to I would like the CSMs of today to focus and elevate their game and focus on adding value closer to the bottom line and top line and not do redundant tasks.
I want to go back to the second point that you mentioned, which is the sales piece, right?
Yes, sir.
That CSM continues to, so I don't want to use the word called struggle, but they don't necessarily embrace that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
That I am also responsible for expansion, bringing in net new revenue from the existing accounts, and therefore add multiplier value to the organization. Now, is this a mindset issue or is this a training issue? What is it at the end of the day, right?
You were part of the journey, Jaideep, when we did this in MoEngage, right? Yeah, it takes time. Like I said, sometimes it's like switching on a bulb, and sometimes it's like turning a ship. And it is both, by the way, just so that you know, right? It's both mindset and it's training, both nature and nurture, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
Nature, basically because of the mindset of or the difficulty of having a difficult conversation with the customer or asking a question about the the dollar value, right? The negotiation of financial conversations with the customer. Some CSMs are generally not very comfortable having those conversations with the fear that that might spoil the tone or relationship. But I'm constantly of the belief that you don't know unless you try, right? I have had some of my best performing CSMs who sold were initially of this mindset that, hey, what would they feel if I tell them that they have to give me more dollars for this product, or what would they tell if I tell them they can't use more for this dollars? So these are just mindset issues, right? Some nature. Also, nurture is basically because organizations today, many of them are stuck in the title game, JD, right? Like they're
Hmm.
talking about, oh, this is CSM, this is AM. Oh my God, CSM is not supposed to do this. We need an AM team to do this. And I go, says who? Who says that, you need a separate title to have this conversation? Obviously, there is a particular skill required to kind of close a deal, construct a deal, create a bill of material, which in many cases is deal desk or deal making art. But that's not what positioning a product is. That's not what having a informed conversation with the customer is. And yeah, to your point, it's a bit of both. Unfortunately, there are still companies who are trying to get stuck in the title game, and I mean, I'm not saying it'll impact them negatively, but they'll take that much more time to change. uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather, I would request them to focus on the metrics and how to get them done.
Yeah. And it's interesting that because I know I was part of that journey too. And, even as basic as going and asking for a raise in terms of the pricing, right? Not even an upsell or a cross sell, but hey, my cost incurrence today for whatever reason has gone up, whether it is engineering, whether it is resources, infrastructure, and therefore I am incurring more costs as opposed to what I was incurring a year or 2 years before. And we know that it's not easy conversation anyway. And I think those were again opportunities to increase the overall
Absolutely.
basically influence on some of those discussions. And I
Yeah.
think going back to our earlier point, which is knowing your customer and their businesses and their workflows makes you a lot more confident to have some of those conversations, because
Exactly.
at a surface level it's hard when you are not really in touch, when you are not regularly conversing, when you don't know the bad news and the good news inside. It is not easy then to have this conversation, because you might sound like someone who is absolutely not uh,
Into
correct. So I think using the leverage of the trust or relationship part probably is the lever to bring in some of this conversation as an advisor, SME, as opposed to, I mean, and like you said, unless you try it 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, fail miserably. There's no other way to learn it, unfortunately. You have to be in the trenches, you have to be in the weeds to essentially pull some of these off, right? So I want to change and, to a different topic now, which is one of the reasons I was also looking forward to this conversation. you being at the helm of post sales, running that org, and now I'm also wearing the marketing hat, and in my previous life I wore a marketing hat. To me, it seems like the marketing team predominantly focused at the pre-sales stage, rightly so, because they are a very close partner of sales to drive. So if you look at today, marketing's job has transformationally changed. Earlier, what used to happen is that even in enterprise, you have a requirement coming up, you pick up the phone, call up a rep, and say, hey, you come and give me a demo.
Hmm.
That time has changed. Today, as
Yeah.
we know that 60-70% of the research is actually done in the background by respective stakeholders and their decision makers, influencers, their team, and so on. By that time, they already have done their education completely. That's when they are ready to actually go and talk to a salesperson, which means the role of sales is transformationally changed to closure, as
Exactly.
opposed to prepping the customer, giving that customer that knowledge, giving them an understanding what is the value proposition, what is the positioning, what is the messaging, how it is going to transform their business. So by the time a sales guy is called, it's more like fulfillment, just like how you have in the B2C side, right?
Exactly.
And that means the overall play field or runway for marketing has actually become bigger.
Yeah.
That means right from how does your customer discover you
Yeah.
during their discovery stage, what are the channels, what are the formats. If you are not there in the early stage, you are already out of the game,
You have
right?
lost it. Yeah.
Second is, once they have seen it, if you look at the funnel, your top of the funnel is all about awareness. Second is nurture, basically moving from top to middle of the funnel, where you give assets, plan assets in a way that your customer starts seeing some value from you directly, so that they consider even removing you with the incumbent, or maybe even looking at you seriously, that you can be within my consideration set.
Yeah.
And finally, even while sort of closing the deal or moving an existing deal in the pipeline to closure, you have great important role to many times in fact partner with CS team to
Exactly.
drive some of those testimonials and referrals and some of those key assets or relationships, which is why I feel that thought often kind of gets missed. Marketing is too sort of, I need to create this content, I need to do this campaign, blah blah. I'm not saying all of them, but most cases I see that they're too engrossed in that, not too much of thought on the post sales, how to leverage or work or partner, collaborate with CST who have CS or account management, depending on the organization and the structure and the design. So the question that I have to begin with, right, that why marketing and customer success teams, I see that rarely partner proactively to create the delight that they have an opportunity to create, and perhaps drive advocacy at the post sales phase, right? Do you have any point of view on that?
No, I have a very strong point of view, Jaideep.
Okay.
And
I'm
and
glad that you have a strong point of view.
no, every time if I had a dollar, when I went and asked a CMO or a head of marketing for a dedicated resource for CS and I got shot down, I would be a billionaire by now, right? Exaggerating, obviously, but where I'm going with this is again a symptom of companies looking at these job functions by their titles and getting stuck in job functions, job descriptions, job titles. And this is again going back to how the world is changing, right? We discussed about concept to market, and it is very easy. So what that leads to is blue oceans are very few and far between. Every
Hmm.
segment, every market is a crowded market and a crowded segment. To your point, if you have to stand out in a crowded market, you need the loudest customer voice. And that's only possible when your customer success teams talk to your marketing teams. If you are a CEO or a CXO who is looking at your marketing as demand gen, pipe gen, top of the funnel team, and you're looking at your customer success as your support ticket resolution team, you will perish very soon, right? I mean, there is a lot of literature. Obviously, you and I don't have to discuss or deliberate this point about how easy it is to make more revenue from the customers than to a net new customer. I mean, if I'm sure all your audience are very mature to understand that for a fact. But when I look at the customer, right, there is organic and inorganic ways a customer can contribute to revenue. Organic is the revenue that the customer can make by their own existence, using more product, using more of the same product, or using more products, or using products in various geographies. That in itself is an organic growth. Customer can also add inorganic growth in terms of voice of the customer. They can be your sponsors, they can promote you, they can give you references. just by the fact that your customers go out there in third party tools like Gartner and G2, nice things about you can, that is enough for you to generate, unlock a lot of leads and opportunities. So it is those CEOs and CXOs who look at this as a unified customer experience and look at customer first as a strategy, right, will only win this game, JD.
Agree. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's where I think CMOs and CCOs, so to speak, should work very closely. And
yeah.
it's what they say, right? You should invest where your revenue is coming from. And
Agreed.
and gone are those days where it's a linear funnel, right? Like it's a flywheel. So you need to be very cognizant of what customers are talking before you and particularly behind you in various channels.
Agreed. So I think customer experience as a charter, interestingly, both sits with CMO and CCO. And therefore, it makes all the more important case to work. I mean, think of it at the onboarding stage. How many time really a marketing head or somebody from the marketing is actually sitting through the conversation to understand whatever we have, the proposition that we had created, the promises that we made in terms of experience, in terms of all of that, is my customer success in sync with that? Have we already
Exactly.
connected on that? Are
Yeah.
we speaking the same language,
Yeah.
right? So that every touch point, the same experience is delivered, right? Be it in the product side, on the CS side, or engineering side, or support side, right? It
Exactly.
doesn't matter. It just that needs to be seamless, and I think that's really is the essence. So we spoke about marketing and CS owning co-initiatives. Do you think there are specific areas that these both teams can actually, just to make it more real, right? Because, so for example, there are events that we remember we did.
Yeah.
Those are very important large events. There are smaller formats like customer advisory boards and
Yes, sir.
other stuff. I mean, I don't want to steal the thunder, but the point is, do you think there are instruments and tools that actually can be used where these two teams proactively can work?
Yeah, no, I think they
And
should.
this is important for our viewers, because the reason I'm actually bringing this up online, this question, because so that this is debated well,
Yeah.
right?
No, and I'm glad you're asking this question, Jerry. But this is particularly very, very, very important for B2B SaaS organizations. And to your point, B2B SaaS world is in general becoming a B2C world where there are a lot of buyers, entry to barrier, exit barriers, and entry barriers have drastically reduced. So people need to have that sense of uh, belonging to a product or a brand, right?
Brand.
You should be proud to be associated with a brand as an employee, as a user, as a partner, irrespective. And I think that's what is the charter for a marketing team.
Because you can't win this game only with features and functionalities today.
Exactly, because they're easily replicatable, right? Is that's what we discussed about concept to market, right? And I mean, I can spend 60 solid minutes on the areas where CMOs and CCOs can collaborate. But if I were to leave you with one important charter that I think every CXO, like for example, every CEO should take out of this conversation, is what is my community strategy? Community is the single most important go to market tool or advantage or lever that CEOs have. Community resonates your message. It can amplify your positives. It can also amplify your negatives. It
Absolutely.
can lift you to $1 billion and it can kill you overnight. So there has to be a deliberate community management strategy, customer community management strategy that you should think about. It should be OKR or Charter or V2Mom or whatever tool you use, a co-owned goal between your CCO and your CMO. Is your product most rated on Gartner? Is your product most rated on G2? Is there a community where you don't have a presence, but your customers are saying nice things about you? Is your customer coming to your defense when a competition is trying to take a dig at you? Right, so that is the amplification effect of a community. And obviously, like I said, there are several other like initiatives, Jadip, we implemented when we were at MoEngage. Could it be excellence awards or cab or executive dinners or so on and so forth? But those are all nice to have, right? Because we were lucky to work in organizations like MoEngage where, like, right from the top there was this clarity. But I'm surprised that the community as such lacks vision in several companies. So I think community should be, I mean, for those who are listening, if nothing else, go back to the whiteboard and ask, what is it? First of all, do you even have a community strategy today? And if it is, what does it look like? What does it look like to your long tail? what does it look like to your top of like the top dollar customer and everybody in between, right? So that's, I mean, there are several companies that are built on communities. There are several companies that were built were destroyed by communities, right? So it's
Yep,
very
yep. I
important.
mean, simply put, community is a force multiplier which can influence definitely a large community. So a
Yes.
smaller community playing the one of the things language or lingo that we use in marketing is reasons to believe, right?
Yeah.
And your CS actually contributes a huge amount by bringing those narratives from customer organizations, those critical voices, this sort of surfaces up for the bigger world, for the bigger community to say actually that this is the reason to believe,
Yes.
because these stories actually repels, right? So in terms of organizational design, obviously to me it always felt like it has to be top driven, and we were fortunate to be in an organization where the leadership was progressive mindset, and they had the means and the will to do that, right? And also the foresight. But in terms of organizational design, do you have any inputs how it should be structured when it comes to like owning joint initiatives, even
You
in
mean
at a
where should
level of even
CS sit
KPIs,
was?
for example?
Do you mean where should CS sit, Jaideep, in the
No, I
larger?
mean that's a separate point I want to separately discuss. But between CS and marketing co-owning, certain KPIs, which directly, whether it is community, whether it is community is a means, but essentially the outcome is experience.
Yeah,
Community is a
no,
means.
I think you're absolutely right, right? So mean, see, this is, and you have been a CMO and a CS leader in your career, so you understand some of these levers from both sides, right? And I feel there is necessarily you don't have to be at odds with each other when you're operating in a org design standpoint, right? But I would definitely strongly believe it has to be a CXO goal. In fact, a CEO
Hmm.
goal, right?
Hmm.
Customer community, or to your point, community is a latter fact. But success marketing or customer marketing in itself has to be a core strategy for any company that calls itself customer centric, right? And customer marketing to me is twofold. One, like any other marketing, right? And you are aware of this, JD, because you've been on both sides. Customer marketing to me is how efficiently are you communicating with your existing customers, because typically sales and marketing, existing customers is an afterthought, right? But there has to be somebody in the company who's first thing in the morning waking up saying, what am I saying to my customer base today? Is that important, relevant, timely, all that, right? So that's one way. And the second thing is, am I providing right platforms, right amplification, and right voice to my promoters? If either of this fails, you're leaving money on the table.
Absolutely.
As a CEO, you are not doing your job right. So you have to be very clear on how what am I saying to my existing customers, because it's recurring revenue. The clock ticks and it resets every year. So I have to be very careful. What am I telling to my customers? And number two, whether it may be 5%, 10%, 20%, 30% customers who love me, do they have sufficient channels to say that?
Do they have the platform to say that?
Exactly, platform to say what they're saying, and that's how you amplify, and then that's how you make lot more noise about the things that you're doing, right? So, and in a way both of them are related. The second one cannot happen with the first, without the first one. But yeah, so it's very important for a CEO level OKR, or a goal, to have this as a top priority.
And this is particularly important message for the early stage founders who
Exactly.
are currently at a stage of defining roles and responsibilities, looking at hiring these key positions and building these teams where they can start from the day zero. They don't need to be reactive like I would say the leaders who probably are started their organization 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, because we have so much of knowledge today available and so much of experience that is
Yeah.
available. We know that this has to be thought through from the day zero.
No, yeah, and great point, Jaydeep. And I also just want to add one caveat is, you don't necessarily have to hire for a role, right? Because I
Hmm.
understand, like, we are promoting a one-person billion-dollar company. I get it, right? Like, you don't have to necessarily hire a CCO or a
Correct.
CMO or
Correct.
have them talk to each other. But in your book, whatever little red book you're taking notes on what's important for you, are you placing enough importance to customer marketing? I think that's the key takeaway, right?
Agree.
Particularly to your point, JD, when you're young and when you have manageable amount of customers, are you
Hmm.
building the discipline then? I
Hmm.
have often seen CEOs, and I continue to see CEOs who think customer success or even customer management or customer marketing is an afterthought. It's okay, I'll figure it out. Let me first focus on sales and people fondly call quota carrying reps, right? So they're very excited about that function, and everybody puts all their eggs in that bucket. And then once they are big enough, it's very difficult for them to get that customer first muscle. Because,
True.
or it's not about the execs, right? They may have the right intent, but people who have been hired before this, very difficult for them to pivot to a customer
Correct.
first mindset and have the customer first principles in place. So
Correct.
exactly to your point, doesn't necessarily have to be a title, a role, or a team, but make sure you're inculcating those hygienes and those disciplines, that discipline before you get to a point where very difficult to turn the ship, so to speak.
Agreed. And I know that how you kind of steward that entire motion of transforming the CS function to from a cost function to a revenue generating function, right? So absolutely resonates that point. Let's switch gear, Atma, at this stage. And AI is everywhere, right?
Yes, sir.
And the fact is that we are moving away from afterthought about how to integrate AI to start thinking in first principle how to solve problem using AI from the day one, right?
Yeah,
That means the new generation of products that we are going to see is by default have going to have AI built in it. In the logic and the thinking will be built in it, right? So the yesteryears of electricity is what going to be AI of today,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So, in this kind of a scenario, how is it transforming customer success operations? You mentioned a couple of points, but I'm particularly interested in if you can share any example of AI-driven, automation, or maybe predictive analysis, or any kind of personalization that you think has been effective using AI as a technology.
No, I'm glad you asked this question, Jaideep, and thank you. I think it's a question that inspires, motivates most of the customer success leaders in the market today, right? And I was saying this to somebody else recently that I use the same example. Motors, not electricity as such, is you don't see as many tricycle rickshaws on the streets these days. Why you it though it may be novel, right? Like you would not see it because it's just not the right use of human effort, or it's not the right use of human strength and spirit, right? So it's the same as with customer success. There are several tasks that we do today in terms of, the most important thing, to your point, Jaydeep, like where would I start if I were to revolutionize a customer success org, is the effort to record, the effort to analyze, and the effort to execute should not be as much as it takes today.
I can't stop thinking about how many times you would actually emphasize on that point that hey, have you taken noted down every point by point from every conversation, right?
I
I
know.
think
I'm guilty as charged. That way, we were making do with the tools that we had at that time. And, we would, like to your point, in reviews, we would pull up the whatever tool we used at that time, and we would pull up and say, where are your notes from that call? And they would say, hey, Atma, I have all these notes in document. I have to just upload. And I would go, come on, why are you not doing it more religiously? To your
yeah.
point, that's my biggest pet peeve with obviously all the SaaS tools, is why does it take so much of human effort? And that's the thing about the connected tools and the MCP world. Post MCP world is, it's like a one uniform blob of intelligence. Why can't you get context from some other tools and create an intelligent report on what happened with the customer, or what you have done with the customer, right? So that's the first dimension, is effort to record is a huge waste of time, and I'm disappointed that people are not solving fast enough. That's number one. Number two is effort to analyze. How many engineers does it take to create a churn analysis update? I'm not even talking about prediction. I'm just talking about, you know what I mean, right?
Laggard
They,
approach, right?
we have faced this problem many a times, which is unfortunate, right? So
Hmm.
effort to analyze. And the third important thing is effort to execute. Like, oh, I have to sit down on a weekend, put my thoughts together, create a email out of the thoughts, put my thoughts together, create a document, send it to 1,000 customers. How much time I'm taking with the computes that we have today, right? With the ability of AI to create content. Content was the first thing that AI disrupted. I still have tools where people are writing emails to their customers on the tool, trying to, effort to execute should not be that much, right? So to your point, if I mean, it's either the existing tools solve for this, or there will be a disruptor in the market who will create all this. But effort to record, effort to analyze, and effort to execute should be way less than what it is, so that the CSM should focus on what is important. giving the right attention to the customer and providing the right value to the customer through their product services. Like let's take a Salesforce example or a MoEngage example, right? I would rather make sure the customer is able to connect to their customers efficiently rather than trying to make sure if the customer QBR deck has been shipped or not. That's
Absolutely.
important. But if you see now, the core function of the job only takes 40% of the time, whereas the housekeeping, the record keeping, the email sending is 60% of my job. So
Ops part, right?
exactly, right. So yeah, so precisely to your point. And also I have this pet peeve where people should no longer be hiring CSMs with CS knowledge, right?
Hmm.
If you are a marketing customer engagement platform, you should hire people who are experts in customer engagement industry. Let them talk to your customers and get great value. You are a HR platform, you should hire ex HR executives or HR people with expertise to help your customers get more value from your product, rather than focusing on people who know how to run customer success, right? Which is, you know what I mean, it's a function which can be easily replaced. So again, how far we will get there is the time, like I said, take it's is the time required to concept to market, but hopefully somebody solves that problem soon.
So, what is the agentic AI play in this?
Yeah, so I mean that's my pet peeve, right? And
Yeah, and I think you can also share your own work and a little bit to contextualize this.
yeah.
And maybe also you can talk about currently that you work for ThoughtWorks, even their context as well. So I think all of
Thoughts,
that can come.
yeah, but I'll give the
Sorry,
ThoughtSpot.
ThoughtSpot.
I'll give you the ThoughtSpot context, but let me talk a bit about my research thesis. Right?
Yes.
It's very theoretical at this point, but it doesn't take a lot of time for theory to become practice. Where I'm going with my thesis, Jadip, is recurring revenue as a function. I'm not talking about customer success. I'm talking about renewal management, account management, customer success, deal making, everything put together can be disrupted using agents. And agentic AI is the latest wave of intelligence that is hitting the market, where you have agents that can take action with human in the loop. So previously it was AI executing on tasks, then it was AI giving decision options. Now AIs are cognizant enough to take action on your behalf. So where I'm going with that is, if you have some low hanging fruit of tasks that your CSMs are doing now, you can offload them. A typical example that I usually use is Lovable, right? For those of us
Hmm.
who use that as an interface, I was able to build a website with user profile, user permissions. I was able to deploy my bots, production levy ready bots to the website. I was able to create a blog in the website, and it was all ready. And
Which website was that? Atma, is it
it's csflywheel.ai.
CS Flywheel? Okay, so
Yeah, yeah. So
you have created that using Lovable.
yes,
Oh wow.
and I did that as part of my. I mean, it will be part of my EFPM PhD thesis. Is how easy is it today to create that? Right now, you don't care who the database engineer is. There is no database engineer. Is where I'm going with it. There is no UI engineer. There is no security engineer who is working on all this context setting, permission setting. Everything is behind a screen. All I need to do is to give natural language commands. One advantage I had, or some of us, you including, we started we started with technical experience, so we can look at basic code either in Python or SQL and go, does this make sense, or is it breaking any existing code? That's the basic information that you need. Sometimes it gives you a prompt to review some of those SQL queries or Python codes, and you validate it, and then you're good. It was able to develop a production level website within 12 hours, and more importantly in less than $100. Now the most important thing here was for me to have an idea of a problem that my customers are facing, and how am I able to solve it, and I was able to do it in less than 12 hours. Same is the case with customer success as a function. Imagine creating a lovable kind of an interface where a CXO, without having any knowledge about CS as a function, can log in and go, hey, give me the list of top three accounts that I need to focus today. And it would give you the list of accounts, the reasons why you need to focus them, the next best actions, and all you need to do is to swipe right, and it would execute on the task. And people who are used to Tinder know how fun it is to swipe right. We're too old to discuss that, but you know what we mean, right? So it is that easy of an interface that you have abstracted. What is my onboarding playbook? Oh, what is my renewal playbook? What is my disengaged customer playbook? Right? You don't need to know all that. It's just a simple interface. I, as a CXO who's just graduated out of IIT Bombay, running my multi-million dollar startup, and I don't know what CS is, but I know I have to take care of my customers. And here is an app that I can run, and it will do everything for me. That's the holy grail, right? So that's where I think agentic AI is up to. Hopefully I can build a few prototypes before then. I built 3 agents. One of my agents is called the Minority Report, Jaideep. uh,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I were in the situation where we had dumps of data from our engineering team about how customers were using our infrastructure. We did
Correct.
not know what to do of it. We did not know how to use it. Now, what Minority Report does is it digests all the API logs and gives you patterns of anomalies and ability for you to identify noisy neighbors. And you know how much SaaS
Mm.
companies hate noisy neighbors, right? So these are some of the
Mm.
strategies which you can and imagine you have an agent which can immediately send an email to your customer as and when they get there and deviate some of the heartburn that you will cause because of that. So like I said, I feel like a kid in the candy store. The possibilities are unlimited. We just need to execute.
True. Actually, there are very interesting use cases that you have just quoted. Are some of these agents now available anywhere which general public can actually look at? Founders can look at. Maybe even recurring revenue professionals can look at.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are several agents. Like I said, at some point, we'll have more than 7 billion agents because everybody is building an agent. But my favorite are the Service Cloud agents and Google agents. Even
Mhm.
the Open AI agents have
Mhm.
been really good. But the only problem with those agents are
Mhm.
they're not context specific. So you may need some work
Mm.
to be put in, but that will at least give you a good head start in terms of getting to where you want to get to in terms of the basic day-to-day workflow automation.
Great. So I can't wait to see where are you going with this approach, Atma,
Thank you.
in the coming days. Clearly, it is an exciting area, and I think you are, deep inside in it already, right?
Yes, sir.
So great. So let me just switch the track of our conversation again, and I want to talk briefly about now. Previously, we just touched upon about it. In your view, in your experience, who should um, the customer success function report to? I mean, there are a lot of debates that we have seen in the past,
Yeah.
right? So, and then we know that how much that has an implication on the way the organization culture is, the way organization embraces the whole land and expansion motion that in the SaaS that we talk about. Can you share a little bit of your own point of view on this?
Yeah, no, I would love to do that, right? And I have my own personal opinion. And let me start this conversation with that caveat. This is nothing but my
No,
personal.
we are interested in your personal opinion, right? We don't want a consensus here.
Thank you, Jaydeep. So let me get the gloves off. Just kidding. So where I'm going with this, Jaydeep, is at least in the beginning stages of a company, and when I say beginning stages of the company, till the company hits 200 to 300 million recurring revenue, I strongly suggest CEOs to own CS function directly. Why am I saying that? Is because of two important reasons. One, like we discussed, customer is the most important entity because of which a company exists. And you don't want too many, so to say, arms between the CEO and the customer,
Too
right?
many layers.
Too many layers between the CEO and the customer. So I would say in the initial phases of a company, building a company, when I'm saying building, I'm saying $200 million recurring revenue business. At least you should solid have a CS. Even then, it is not very advisable, but you can still hand it over to your CCO or CRO because you would have built a discipline, a practice, a DNA in the company that is customer first. At that point, I'm assuming even your CRO and your GTM functions know how important CS is. So that's one, right? The customer is more important. And number two, the reason why CS function should report into CEO is just a basic maker checker principle, right? I'm not, I love sales guys. I've worked with sales people for the longest time. But to me, sales teams are more quarter to quarter revenue driven. Let's get the pipeline in kind of an approach.
Yeah.
Whereas CS to me is let's think about this customer longer term value, about customer life cycle value. Let's do what is right for the customer for the longer term, even if it means taking a hit short term. And if your CS teams are reporting to CROs way too early in your org, or if they are reporting to a CRO even before the customer success muscle has been built in your company, you will have a very there will be two problems. One is you will have a very inconsistent customer experience, right? And number two, you will have a very revenue centric customer success operation, which is not necessarily true, right? I mean, I understand that the primary objective of a business is to make profit. So we should all be revenue centric. But I believe in being revenue centric longer term than at a quarter level. So that's where I'm going with having. So I've seen CS functions roll into COO. That's one challenge because that's a very control function, right? CFOs and COOs tend to be very control functions. They are more cost driven than outcome driven. They are also very revenue driven and short term than anything else. So I strongly believe in CEO, and this is true for several. I mean, in fact, we have seen companies like HubSpot which are doing the way they are doing because Yamini herself was a CCO before, and that's a
Correct.
company where CCOs report to CEOs, right? And uh,
Correct.
even MoEngage, at MoEngage I reported to Ravi directly, and you're seeing the growth
Correct.
or the DNA of customer centricity in the company, right? So I strongly believe CS functions should have a direct line to CEO in the beginning.
Got it. Yep. No, makes totally sense. I think, especially like you said, that when you are at a growth stage, this is very true. All right. So, Atma, you are currently a fellow at Indian School of Business. You are doing your research. Can you share some highlights from your research at ISB? And, if there are any interesting findings or anything related to customer success, digital transformation, or any areas of related to that, or even recurring revenue, which is one of your pet area,
Yeah, no,
um,
thank you.
which probably is worth for our viewers to listen to.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jaideep. And I strongly believe in continuous learning. And we can be caught in our own echo chambers if we don't take time to improve ourselves, and hence the ISB, and hence my fellowship. There are several learnings from ISB, and one thing that ISB program does to you is they make you read hundreds of published papers every residency. So you get to learn a lot about what to do, and more importantly, what not to do. I've started reading more than I ever did before, thanks to the program. But some of the key learnings that I mean, personally, I'll start with personal learning, and then I'll go to the learnings in recurring revenue space. Personally, I have
Sure.
learned that there is no impossible goal. Anything is a muscle which comes from discipline. Again, as I say in a lighter note, you should never ask a EFPM student when they are finishing their thesis. That's no big no. But when I started, I was very skeptical and I was very nervous about the journey. But as I started reading, as I got the horse to the pond, so to speak, I built the muscle. I started enjoying the process. So I think my personal journey has always been to get myself to do things that I wouldn't otherwise do. So I get better at them. So I think this is yet another example. And in recurring revenue, like
And
I
I'm
said,
so glad you executed. I have been thinking only about it.
I strongly recommend Jaydeep. I strongly recommend taking a break and going back to school. It humbles you in ways that you wouldn't imagine. Let me just say that, Jaydeep. Now I'm a bit hesitant before giving Anirudh any lessons on how to do his homework. Let me just say that.
Got it.
But on the revenue recurring side, I think we discussed a bit. The world is about to change, and about to change very fast and very much. Like I would say, brace for impact. It's time to change, and the only people who are good at change management will be those who will come out the other side shining. Otherwise, it's very easy for people to perish, companies to perish, teams to perish. So yeah, let's be open to change, and let's be keen to learn. So that those would be my two learnings from my journey.
Perfect. And you wrote a book, and it's called The Customer Success Flywheel, which emphasizes on importance of building advocacy and driving recurring revenue growth. What are the key stages of this flywheel? Can you talk about it briefly about the flywheel,
Yeah.
and how can probably organizations accelerate that movement?
Yeah, thank you, Jaydeep. I think we touched upon various aspects of the flywheel through the discussion, right? And the primary driver in writing the book was when I cautiously realized, and I was forcing, so to speak, the CEOs I was talking to, or I was guiding on, to move away from looking at a customer cycle as a single funnel, right? It is never a funnel. It is never one directional, right? It's a cycle. And to your point, a customer converts from being a prospect to a lead to an opportunity to a customer and then the customer drives more opportunities for your company, not only by them using more products, by also being your advocate and recommending other customers to use your products and services. So I think for every SaaS organization, particularly B2B SaaS organization, it is very important for you to realize that you keep your customers happy, engaged. You were talking about acquisition. A lot of companies talk about acquisition. Not many companies talk about retention, and very few companies talk about engagement. So you have to not only acquire customers, but you have to retain and engage them, and that's where the flywheel comes in handy. Customers, many companies only talk about acquiring customers. Very few talk about retaining them.
Yeah.
Even fewer customers talk about engaging. So I think these are the three important parts of the customer success flywheel.
Let's quickly switch on to our last segment where I usually ask this question. So, what do you do to keep yourself updated? Is there any resources that you specifically refer to or anything that you read? Obviously, for your fellowship project, there are multiples or multitude of documents and papers that you'll have to go through. But otherwise, just to keep yourself updated in general in the business side, as an exec, is there anything that you listen or read or any other sources or book that you can recommend? Obviously, I mean, if there is something that is in top of your mind, otherwise you can always some of those add those resources in our show note.
Yeah, so I think I'm a big podcast fan, Jaydeep. And again, all this is my pre-FPM stage. Nowadays, I'm only reading all the research journals, which in itself is an interesting read.
Heavy research journalist.
Yeah, but before I used to be a big fan of podcasts because that gave you a lot of content and you could multitask with those contents. And if you are a person driving, particularly in Bangalore, you could go through two, three podcasts in one trip. Just kidding. I
Easily.
love Bangalore. But so the point is, I think I love the SaaSter podcast. I love the HBR podcast, and I also love. Very recently, I started listening to SaaS Boomi. There are several people like you, everybody to their own. And I used to be very particular about my periodicals before. And I have a subscription to HBR because it's very easy for us to get caught up in our own vertical, in our own business, and in our own function. So HBR kind of keeps you grounded and gives you a lot more holistic information about where we are going. Yeah, so this would be it. Like I said, I used to think reading about 50 pages a week was a big deal before. So this is all I could do. But now I stand corrected. Human beings can read a lot more.
Now I get it, like why you said this is an humbling experience.
Yes, sir.
So, what's that one piece of advice you would received earlier in your career?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, right? So I think there's several. I've been really fortunate to be mentored by some of the best in the industry, Jaydeep. So I think that's the whatever limited success I've had in my professional life was thanks to my mentors. But one thing common to all the advice was never say no to a stretch assignment. You may be scared at first, but always leap and you will stretch yourselves to deliver it. I mean, in other ways, have faith in yourselves and take that stretch assignment. And
Hmm.
yeah, so that's always been my motto, and I've always been going from one stretch assignment to another scary assignment, one after the other.
Yeah, no, it clearly shows your career trajectory as well as your own other persuasions in the personal side, personal development side. Absolutely walking the talk. Where can people connect with you, Atma?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that's the best way to reach me. And I can provide the credentials on
Yeah,
the
no, I'll share the credentials. Sure. Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
and
So
I'll also share. So your book is also there on Amazon, right?
yeah, we can, yeah, would be
So
great
I'll
if you could
also
share the
share
book.
the link of that.
Yeah, and csflywheel.ai website, so people can check out what
And
I've
I'll
been.
share that. Yes, absolutely. I'll share that website link as well. All right, Atma, it has been pleasure talking to you. I think we have covered quite a bit of ground,
Yeah, and I
starting
can't
from,
believe we've been talking for 90 minutes. But
yeah,
this is what happens when you're having fun. And that is true for any
absolutely.
conversation with you, Jaydeep. Always enriching, always engaging. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Atma. In fact, we covered quite a bit of ground, starting from um, the how the CS team is evolving, the charter of CS team is evolving. We spoke about what are the current trends in CS. We spoke about marketing and CS partnership. We spoke about AI's influence across the business, but more specifically in CS and how we should be looking at it. We also looked at some of the use cases of agentic AI that you walked us through. And we also spoke about organizational design and how and where your point of view in terms of where CS team should be aligned to for a certain stage of your growth and why that is. And then we also spoke about your career a little bit, about your research work a little bit, about your book. So it's such a breadth of topics, but all of that in context to what we are all living with, which is AI and agentic AI and transformation, and you yourself personally so actively participating in it, even at this stage of your career, is commendable with a
Thank you.
PhD on. So it's a delight always connecting with you, Atma, and learning from you.
Likewise.
So thank you for your time and thanks for being on the show.
The pleasure is all mine, Jaydeep. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.